The grand chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure of crystal and metal that orbited a dying star. Inside, representatives from 847 different species gathered in their designated sections. The air hummed with translation devices, converting thousands of languages into coherent meaning. This was the heart of galactic civilization, the place where laws were made and destinies decided. Commander Deho stood in the human delegation area, his uniform crisp and his expression calm. Beside him, Dr. Hannah reviewed data on a translucent screen, her fingers moving quickly across the display. They had been summoned here for an emergency session, though nobody had told them what the emergency was. That alone told Deho everything he needed to know. When the council wanted to discuss something with you instead of just informing you, it meant they wanted something you wouldn't want to give. The chamber fell silent as High Chancellor Qorim rose from the central platform. The Chancellor was a Bavarian, a species that resembled nothing so much as a floating jellyfish made of light. Its voice came through the translation system as deep and resonant, carrying weight that its delicate form didn't suggest. "We convene today to address a matter of galactic security," Qorim began. "The human species has, in the past century, demonstrated technological advancement at a rate unprecedented in Council history. While we celebrate innovation, we must also ensure stability." Deho felt Hannah tense beside him. Here it comes, he thought. Councillor Vector stood next, his forearms spreading wide in what his species considered a gesture of authority. The VRYNN were one of the oldest council races, and they never let anyone forget it. Humanity has developed weapons technology that destabilizes the balance of power. Their quantum jump drives allow military vessels to appear anywhere in the galaxy within hours. Their defensive shields operate on principles our best scientists cannot penetrate. This creates an unacceptable risk. Another counselor, a crystalline being whose name Deho couldn't pronounce, added its voice. "We have documented 17 instances of human military vessels entering restricted zones without authorization. Their expansion into unclaimed systems proceeds at 3 times the recommended rate. They ignore our guidelines and act with independence that threatens collective security." Deho remained still, his face showing nothing. He had learned long ago that the best response to accusations was silence. Let them speak. Let them reveal their true intentions. High Chancellor Qorim continued. "Therefore, the Council has reached a decision. Humanity must submit its quantum jump drive technology to Council oversight. All specifications, all manufacturing details, all applications must be shared with the Council Science Directorate. Furthermore, human military operations must receive Council approval before execution. We ask this not as punishment, but as protection. Protection for humanity, and protection for the galaxy." The chamber erupted in sounds of approval from most species. A few remained silent. Deho noticed that Ambassador Suho of the Delphine delegation was looking at him with concern in her large, dark eyes. The Delphines were one of the few species that had ever fought alongside humans. They understood. "And, if we refuse?" Deho's voice cut through the noise clearly. The chamber went quiet again. Qorim's luminous form pulsed with what might have been surprise. Species didn't usually question council decisions so directly. "Refusal would be unfortunate," Qorim said carefully. "It would necessitate certain measures. Economic sanctions. Suspension of trading privileges. Removal from council protection zones. We would not wish to take such actions, but galactic security must be our priority." Vector leaned forward, his voice harder than the Chancellor's. "You are one species among hundreds. You have benefited from Council membership for a century. We have given you access to technology, trade routes, and diplomatic channels that accelerated your development by millennia. Now we ask for cooperation, and you question us?" Dr. Hannah touched Deho's arm gently, a warning. "Don't escalate." "Not yet." Deho took a breath and stepped forward to the speaker's position. "The Council has indeed provided opportunities, and humanity has been grateful. We have honored every treaty. We have paid every fee and tax. We have contributed resources to 14 council projects. When the Krell attacked the mining colonies at Zephan, human ships arrived to defend them while council vessels were still debating jurisdiction. When plague struck the Borellian homeworld, human medical teams spent 2 years developing a cure and distributed it freely. We have been good members. He paused, letting his words sink in. As for our technology, yes, we have made advances. We had to. In our first decade of council membership, we were attacked 3 times by species who saw us as weak newcomers. The council expressed concern but offered no aid. We learned that in this galaxy, you survive by being strong. Our quantum drives, our shields, our weapons, we developed them because we had to, not because we wanted to threaten anyone. Noble words, Vector said dismissively. But they do not change reality. Your technology in the wrong hands could devastate entire sectors. The council must have oversight. The council wants our technology, Hannah spoke up suddenly, her voice sharp. Let's be honest about that. You've been trying to reverse engineer our systems for years. We know about the analysis teams studying debris from our test flights. We know about the industrial espionage. You're not asking for oversight. You're demanding we hand over what you couldn't take or copy. Several counselors began shouting objections. QRM raised multiple tentacles for silence. Dr. Hannah, such accusations are unseemly, the Chancellor said. We seek only peace and stability. Deho held up a hand, quieting Hannah. High Chancellor, counselors, this is clearly a matter that requires careful consideration. We request a 48-hour recess to consult with our government. Surely a decision of this magnitude deserves proper deliberation. QRM's form flickered. The council had expected either immediate compliance or angry refusal. A calm request for time was unexpected. After a moment of silent communication with other senior counselors, QRM spoke. Very well. 48 hours. But, understand, Commander, that this is not a negotiation. The council has decided. You may consult with your government about implementation, but the decision stands. Deho bowed formally, a gesture of respect that committed him to nothing. We understand perfectly, High Chancellor. Thank you for your time. As the session ended and the various delegations began to disperse, Ambassador Siho approached the human section. She spoke quietly, her translator keeping her words private. They are afraid of you. You know that, yes? I suspected, Deho replied. Fear makes people dangerous, Soho said. My government will support whatever decision Earth makes. You have been true friends to the Delphine people. That is not forgotten. After Soho left, Hannah turned to Deho. They're really going to do this. Sanctions, isolation, all of it. Deho looked out at the stars beyond the crystal walls. Then, we have a choice to make. Submit, or stand alone. Can we stand alone? Hannah asked. I guess we're about to find out, Deho said quietly. Contact Earth. Tell President Jaiwan we need an emergency session of the Assembly. All representatives, no exceptions. As they walked toward their shuttle, neither of them looked back at the Grand Chamber. Behind them, counselors were already celebrating what they thought was a certain victory. After all, no single species had ever defied the Council before. They had no idea what was coming. The Unified Assembly Chamber on Earth was built into the side of a mountain in Switzerland, a compromise location chosen when the nations of Earth finally united 70 years ago. Now, every seat was filled. Representatives from every region, every major city, every significant population center had gathered. They knew this was important. Commander Deho's message had made that clear. President Jaiwan stood at the central podium, her silver hair tied back, her face showing the weight of the decision before them. She had been a trade negotiator before becoming president, someone who understood the value of compromise. But she also understood when compromise meant surrender. You've all received the brief, she began. The Galactic Council has given us an ultimatum. surrender our quantum drive technology and submit our military to their oversight, or face sanctions and expulsion.
We have 36 hours left to respond. This assembly will decide humanity's answer.
The chamber erupted immediately. Hundreds of voices shouting, some in fear, some in anger, some calling for calm. Jaiwan waited for the noise to subside before continuing. I've asked Admiral Taeyang, Dr. Hyun, and Representative Minji to present different perspectives on our options.
Admiral, please begin.
Admiral Taeyang was a large man with scars on his face from the Krell attacks 15 years ago. He had commanded the defense of the colony at New Seoul and had watched 3,000 civilians die before reinforcements arrived.
He approached the podium with heavy steps. Let me be direct, Taeyang said. The Council's protection is a joke.
When the Krell attacked our colonies, Council ships sat at the edge of the system and watched. They said they needed authorization from the High Council before intervening. By the time they received it, we had already driven the Krell back ourselves.
3,000 dead, and they watched. He activated a holographic display showing star charts.
In the past 20 years, human colonies have been attacked 8 times by various species. The Council intervened exactly 0 times with military force. They offered thoughts and prayers and stern warnings to the attackers after the fact. Meanwhile, we lost 11,000 citizens defending ourselves.
Murmurs ran through the assembly.
Many knew these facts, but hearing them stated so plainly made them undeniable. The Council wants our quantum drives because they're terrified, Taeyang continued.
Our drives are faster and more efficient than anything they have.
Our ships can reach anywhere in known space in hours. Their fastest ships need days or weeks.
If we give them this technology, we lose our only real advantage. And their oversight of our military? That means we can't defend ourselves without asking permission first. Permission they've proven they won't give when we actually need it. He stepped back. My recommendation is simple. We refuse. If they want to sanction us, let them. We're strong enough to stand on our own. Next came Representative Minji, a younger woman who led the Pacific Coalition delegation. She was known as a voice for peace and careful diplomacy. I respect the Admiral's passion, Minji said carefully, but I must offer a different view. Yes, the Council has failed us at times. But complete isolation is dangerous. We trade with over 200 species. Our economy is deeply connected to galactic commerce. Sanctions would hurt millions of our people. Jobs would be lost. Resources we depend on would become scarce. She pulled up economic data. 40% of our advanced medical technology comes from Council sources. 35% of our food production uses seeds developed through Council agricultural programs. We import materials we can't produce ourselves. If we're cut off, people will suffer. We'll adapt, someone shouted from the assembly floor. Yes, eventually, Minji agreed. But how many will suffer while we do? How many will die from treatable diseases when we can't get medicine? How many will go hungry? I'm not saying we should surrender our sovereignty. I'm saying we should negotiate. Find a middle path. Perhaps we can share some technology in exchange for guaranteed protections. Perhaps we can accept limited oversight in exchange for maintaining our economic ties. President Jaiwan nodded. Thank you, Representative. Dr. Hyun, you have the floor. Dr. Hyun was the head of Human Advanced Research, a quiet woman who rarely appeared in public. Most people knew her only as the name on various breakthrough papers. She walked to the podium carrying a data tablet, looking uncomfortable with all the attention. I'm not good at speeches, she began. I'm a scientist. But I need to tell you something that's been classified until now. President Jaiwan has authorized me to share it with this assembly. The chamber went absolutely silent. For the past 15 years, since the first Krell attacks, we've been preparing for the possibility that we might need to stand alone. Not because we wanted to, but because we recognized the Council's protection was unreliable.
She activated a new set of displays, showing star systems that weren't on any official maps.
These are locations of 37 hidden colony sites. Small populations, fully self-sufficient, located in systems the Council doesn't know about.
We've been using unmanned ships to establish them slowly, carefully, without drawing attention.
Gasps echoed through the chamber. We've also constructed automated manufacturing facilities in 16 systems.
These facilities can produce everything from food to weapons without human oversight. They're powered by fusion reactors built into asteroids, invisible to standard scans.
More images appeared, showing vast underground warehouses filled with supplies. Resource depots.
Enough raw materials, medicine, seeds, and equipment to support our entire population for 10 years without any external trade. We've been stockpiling them gradually, using a fraction of our trade surplus each year.
Representative Minji looked stunned. You've been planning to leave the Council for 15 years?
No, Dr. Hyun said.
We've been planning to survive without the Council if we had to. There's a difference.
These are insurance, not a declaration of intent.
But they exist.
And they mean that the economic arguments, while real, are not as catastrophic as they might seem.
We can survive. We might even thrive. Admiral Taeyeon was smiling.
President Jaiwon's face remained neutral, but her eyes showed satisfaction.
Dr. Hyun continued. There's more. Our quantum drive technology isn't just faster than Council drives. It's based on completely different principles. If we share it with them, we don't just give away an advantage. We give away a fundamental understanding of physics that took us decades to develop. They'll use it to catch up, then, likely use it against us. The Council has shown repeatedly that they view newer species as temporary members, useful until they become inconvenient.
She looked around the chamber.
I've worked with alien scientists. Many are brilliant. But I've also seen how the Council operates.
They take technology from developing species and claim it was developed through collaborative research. They've done it to 17 species in the past 2 centuries.
We have the documentation.
They want our drives not to protect the galaxy, but to maintain their dominance. The assembly broke into discussion again. President Jaiwon let it continue for several minutes before calling for order.
We need to vote, she said. But first, I want to share my own thoughts.
I've spent my career finding middle ground, building bridges, making deals that left everyone somewhat satisfied.
I believe in diplomacy.
But diplomacy requires 2 parties acting in good faith. She paused, choosing her words carefully.
The Council isn't acting in good faith.
They're acting out of fear and greed. They see us growing stronger and it terrifies them. They dress it up in language about security and protection, but the truth is simple. They want to control us because they can't compete with us. If we surrender now, it won't stop here.
Next, they'll want oversight of our research. Then, our education systems. Then, our government itself.
They'll regulate us into mediocrity because our excellence makes them uncomfortable.
I've seen it happen in negotiations. Give an inch, lose a mile.
Jaiwon's voice grew stronger.
Representative Minji is right that people might suffer in the short term if we stand alone.
But Dr. Hyun has shown us that we've prepared for that possibility.
And Admiral Taeyang is right that the Council's protection has been worthless when we actually needed it. We've been defending ourselves all along. We just didn't admit it publicly. She looked out at the assembled representatives. The question isn't whether we can survive without the Council. Dr. Hyun has shown that we can.
The question is whether we want to live on our knees or stand on our feet.
Do we want to be truly human, making our own choices and facing our own consequences? Or do we want to be pets, protected and controlled and slowly diminished?
The chamber was silent now, everyone listening.
I call for a vote, Jaiwon said.
Not on surrender or compromise, but on independence.
Do we walk away from the Council entirely, or do we submit to their demands? No middle ground this time. We choose our path. The vote took 3 hours. Representatives debated, argued, reconsidered. Some changed their minds multiple times. President Jaiwan listened to every voice, acknowledged every concern. When the final count came in, it was unanimous. Not because everyone agreed, but because even those who feared independence recognized that submission was worse. The vote was for freedom. President Jaiwan looked at Admiral Taeyang. Prepare the fleet for possible conflict. I don't think they'll attack, but we need to be ready. She turned to Dr. Hyun. Accelerate our hidden colony programs. If we're doing this, we do it properly. Finally, she looked at the screen showing Commander Daeho waiting on a secure channel from orbit. Commander, you may inform the Council of our decision. Humanity chooses to stand alone. On the screen, Daeho smiled. It will be my pleasure, Madam President. The Grand Chamber was even more crowded than it had been 2 days earlier. Word had spread across the galaxy that humanity would give its answer today, and representatives from hundreds of species had come to witness what everyone assumed would be either Earth's submission or its humiliation. News drones hovered in designated zones, broadcasting to billions of viewers across Council space. High Chancellor Kuo Rim floated at the center platform, surrounded by senior counselors. Counselor Vector sat in a position of prominence, his forearms folded in satisfaction. They had spent the past 48 hours preparing implementation plans for humanity's integration into Council oversight. Committees had been formed. Regulations had been drafted. They were ready. Commander Daeho entered the chamber with Dr. Hannah at his side. They walked calmly, neither rushing nor dawdling, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Every eye in the vast space turned to watch them. Daeho reached the speaker's platform and stood there for a moment, looking around at the assembly. His uniform was perfectly pressed. His expression was peaceful. He carried no data tablets, no props, nothing but himself. High Chancellor, counselors, representatives of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice clear and steady. I come before you today to respond to the ultimatum presented to humanity 48 hours ago. The chamber held its breath. First, I want to express humanity's gratitude, Daeho continued. When we first reached the stars and discovered we were not alone, it was overwhelming. The Council welcomed us, taught us, and showed us the wonders of galactic civilization. We learned languages, customs, and technologies that accelerated our development. For this, we are genuinely thankful. Vector leaned back slightly, satisfied. Here comes the surrender, his posture said. We have tried to repay that welcome, Daeho went on. In our century of Council membership, humanity has honored every treaty we signed. We have paid every membership fee, every tax, every levy, without complaint. When the Council called for volunteers for scientific expeditions, human researchers answered. When the Council needed resources for relief efforts, human ships delivered them. When the Council required soldiers to guard remote outposts, human men and women stood watch. He paused, letting his words settle. We have bled for this Council. When the Krell attacked the mining colonies at Zephan, colonies that belonged to the Bavarian Consortium, it was human ships that responded. We lost 4 vessels and 372 crew members defending people we had never met. The Council thanked us afterward and gave our dead medals. It was the least they could do, since Council forces arrived 6 days after the battle ended. Uncomfortable shifting rippled through some delegations. Others remained still, watching carefully. When plague struck the Borellian homeworld, threatening to kill millions, human medical teams spent 2 years developing a cure. We shared it freely with all affected species. The Council praised our generosity. But it was just what neighbors should do for neighbors. Daeho's voice remained calm, factual, without accusation. He was simply stating history. I mention these things not to boast, but to establish a foundation of fact. Humanity has been a good member of this Council. We have contributed far more than our size or age would suggest was required. We have asked for little and given much. Dr. Hannah stood quietly beside him, her face unreadable. Now, regarding the Council's recent ultimatum, Daeho said.
We were asked to surrender our quantum drive technology and submit our military operations to Council oversight. We were told this was necessary for galactic security and our own protection.
He looked directly at High Chancellor QORM.
We have considered this request carefully. Our government has debated it thoroughly.
We have examined it from every angle, considered every consequence, weighed every option. The chamber was absolutely silent now.
Billions watched through broadcasts.
This was the moment. And we have decided, Deho said simply, that humanity will withdraw from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. For 3 full seconds, nobody reacted.
The words were so unexpected that minds needed time to process them.
Withdraw? Not refuse the ultimatum and negotiate? Not submit? Withdraw entirely? Then, the chamber exploded into chaos.
Counselors were shouting. Some in anger, some in disbelief, some in what might have been panic.
High Chancellor QORM's luminous form flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among the Bavarians.
Vector was on his feet, all 4 arms gesturing wildly.
Deho stood calmly in the center of the storm, waiting. After 2 full minutes, QORM managed to restore some order.
Commander, you cannot be serious, the Chancellor said, his translated voice strained.
This is not a matter for unilateral decision. The Council does not simply allow members to leave.
There are procedures, negotiations, agreements to be reached.
With respect, High Chancellor, we are not asking permission, Deho replied. We are informing you of our decision.
Your ultimatum made clear that you view us as subjects rather than equals.
We do not accept that relationship. Therefore, we choose to end our membership.
Vector's voice boomed across the chamber.
You dare? You are one species. One world. You think you can survive without the Council's protection, without our trade networks, without our knowledge? Deho turned to face the VRYNN Counselor. Counselor Vector, your concern is noted.
But, I would point out that humanity has survived every threat we've faced, largely without Council protection.
As for your trade networks, they have profited greatly from human participation.
And, regarding knowledge, we have contributed as much as we have received. Another counselor, a floating crystalline being, spoke up.
This is madness. The economic consequences alone will devastate your people. Reconsider this foolishness before it's too late.
It's not too late for anything, Dr. Hanna said, speaking for the first time.
That's exactly the point.
We choose our own path while we still can, rather than waiting until we're too dependent to choose at all.
High Chancellor QORM tried a different approach. Commander, Dr. Hanna, please. Let us discuss this calmly. Perhaps the ultimatum was too harsh. We can negotiate new terms.
We can find a middle ground that respects humanity's concerns while addressing the Council's security needs.
Deho shook his head slowly.
High Chancellor, with respect, the time for negotiation has passed. Your ultimatum revealed how the Council truly views us. Not as partners, but as potential threats to be controlled.
We will not live under that shadow. What of your existing obligations? Another counselor demanded.
You have treaties, trade agreements, mutual defense pacts.
All existing agreements will be honored until their natural expiration dates, Deho answered. We will not breach any contract. Humanity keeps its word. However, we will not be renewing Council-mandated agreements.
Individual species are welcome to negotiate bilateral treaties with Earth if they choose. We hold no grudges and wish everyone well.
The chamber erupted again.
Some species were shouting threats. Others were calling for immediate sanctions.
A few, notably including the Delphine delegation, remained silent, watching thoughtfully.
Vector's voice rose above the others.
You will regret this.
You think you're strong, but you're children playing with fire. When the Krell come for you again, when other threats emerge, you'll come crawling back begging for our protection.
Deho met the counselor's 4 eyes calmly.
Perhaps.
Or perhaps we'll handle our own problems, as we always have.
Either way, it will be our choice and our consequence.
High Chancellor Qorem made one final attempt. Commander, I urge you to reconsider. Take more time. Consult with your government again. This decision will change everything.
It will, Deho agreed. And we have considered it thoroughly.
Our decision is final.
He turned to face the entire assembly one last time. On behalf of the people of Earth, I thank the Galactic Council for a century of membership. We have learned much and, we hope, contributed much in return.
We bear no ill will toward any species represented here.
We simply choose to walk our own path. He bowed formally, a gesture of respect that had been humanity's tradition for thousands of years.
Beside him, Dr. Hannah bowed as well.
Then, they turned and walked toward the exit.
The silence that fell was deafening.
Every being in that chamber watched as the two humans crossed the floor, their footsteps echoing.
Nobody tried to stop them. Nobody knew what to do. This had never happened before.
As they reached the doorway, Ambassador Suho of the Delphine delegation stood and bowed to them, a gesture of respect between equals. A few other representatives rose as well, though most remained seated in shock.
Deho and Dr. Hannah walked out of the grand chamber and didn't look back.
Within an hour, the message went out across all human colonies, stations, and ships in Council space. Every diplomat began packing. Every trader started closing accounts. Every scientist wrapped up research projects. Every military advisor prepared to return home. There was no violence.
No sabotage.
No angry speeches or dramatic gestures. Humanity simply began leaving, quietly and efficiently, like guests departing after a party that had run its course. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity walked away. And, in the Grand Chamber, as counselors screamed and argued and tried to make sense of what had just happened, High Chancellor Qorem floated alone at the center platform, staring at the empty doorway. For the first time in his long life, he felt genuine fear about what was coming. 3 weeks after humanity's withdrawal, the first cracks began to show. The Terran Trade Network had been humanity's gift to galactic commerce, a system of logistics, banking, and route optimization that handled 34% of all interstellar trade. It was so efficient and reliable that most species barely noticed it was there. They just knew their goods arrived on time and their payments processed smoothly.
When the network shut down at midnight on day 21, the galaxy noticed.
Cargo ships found themselves stranded at waypoints that no longer existed.
Banking transactions failed mid-process.
Supply chains that had operated smoothly for decades suddenly froze. Within 72 hours, the economic disruption had affected over 600 species.
High Chancellor Qorem received the first emergency reports in his private chambers. The Bavarian Consortium's trade minister was frantic.
17 of our major shipping companies have filed for bankruptcy protection. Our stock markets have dropped 40% in value.
How did we not know we were this dependent on human systems? Because it was convenient not to know, Qorem said quietly.
The truth was that everyone had assumed the network would always be there, that humanity wouldn't dare disrupt it because doing so would hurt them too.
They had been wrong.
The second crisis emerged on day 28.
The water purification system on Korvax Prime, capital world of the powerful Korvax hegemony, failed catastrophically.
The planet had 18 billion inhabitants and only 3 days of clean water in reserve. Panic spread rapidly. The Korvax emergency response teams tore apart the system trying to find the problem. What they found was worse than a simple malfunction. The purification system had been running on outdated technology for decades, but it worked because someone had been constantly maintaining and updating the control systems. Someone who nobody had paid attention to because the work was invisible and the systems kept running. That someone had been a team of human engineers who volunteered their time because they believed in helping. When the human team received orders to return to Earth, they had left detailed instructions for the Korvax engineers to follow. But the instructions required expertise that the Korvax simply didn't have. The humans had been doing so much behind the scenes that nobody realized how much until they were gone.
The Korvax ambassador contacted Earth directly, bypassing the council. President Jaiwan took the call personally.
"We need your engineers back," the ambassador said, his translator barely keeping up with his rapid speech.
"We're facing a planetary catastrophe.
Millions could die." "I'm very sorry to hear that," Jaiwan replied calmly.
"I'll send your technical documentation to our best water systems experts. They'll review it and provide recommendations.
The information will be free of charge."
"We need the team here. We need them to fix it directly. Our engineers are no longer stationed in Council space," Jaiwan said. "However, if the Korvax hegemony wishes to negotiate a bilateral assistance treaty, we would be happy to discuss terms. We could send a team under those circumstances." "Terms? You want payment while people are dying?"
Jaiwan's voice remained steady but grew colder. "Ambassador, your world benefited from our engineers' work for 20 years. They were there voluntarily, receiving no payment from your government, working because they wanted to help.
Now you're in crisis and you want to blame us for not continuing to provide free labor?" The ambassador was silent for a moment. "What kind of terms?"
"We'll send the treaty draft within 6 hours.
It's quite reasonable.
We ask for fair compensation for our engineers' time and a formal acknowledgement that this is a service contract between equals, not charity you can take for granted." The Korvax signed the treaty within 12 hours. Human engineers arrived within 24 and had the water system running again in 3 days. But the incident spread across the galaxy like wildfire.
How many other systems had been quietly maintained by humans? How many other invisible services had disappeared? The answer was hundreds. Power grids, medical facilities, communications networks, environmental systems on dozens of worlds. Humans had been the ones keeping things running smoothly.
Not because they were paid to, but because they saw problems and fixed them.
Because that's what humans did.
Now those problems weren't being fixed, and the galaxy was discovering exactly how much they had relied on humanity's quiet competence. The third crisis came on day 43, and it was the worst yet. The Krell Dominion, a militaristic species that had been testing Council borders for decades, launched a massive invasion of 3 Council systems. Their war leader Cross had been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment. Humanity's withdrawal was that moment. The Krell knew something that most Council species had forgotten. For the past 30 years, human rapid response fleets had been positioned at strategic points throughout Council space. Officially, they were there for training exercises.
Unofficially, everyone knew they were a deterrent.
The Krell were aggressive, not stupid.
They didn't attack where human warships might respond within hours. But now the human fleets were gone. Cross struck 3 systems simultaneously with overwhelming force.
The local defense forces, used to relying on the possibility of human backup, weren't prepared for a full-scale assault. Within a week, the Krell had conquered 2 systems completely and were besieging the third. The Council called an emergency military session. Councillor Vector took command of the response, his strategic experience making him the obvious choice.
"We need to assemble a fleet immediately," Vector announced.
"I'm calling for contributions from all member species with military capability." The response was chaos. Every species had its own military structure, its own command language, its own tactical doctrine. Coordinating them was like trying to conduct an orchestra where every musician played a different instrument and read different sheet music.
Admiral Taeyan watched the Council's military discussions from Earth, monitoring public broadcasts.
"They're doomed," he said to President Jaiwan during a briefing.
"It'll take them 3 weeks to assemble a coordinated force.
The Krell will have conquered all 3 systems by then.
Should we help?" Jaiwan asked. "Not unless they ask properly. And not for free."
The Council fleet finally assembled on day 64, 3 weeks after the invasion began.
All 3 systems had fallen to the Krell.
The Council force was massive, drawn from 40 different species, but coordination was a nightmare. They spent another week just establishing a unified command structure.
Meanwhile, on Earth, Ambassador Siho of the Delphine delegation requested an urgent meeting with President Jaiwan. "My people want to leave the council," Soho said directly. "We've been debating it since your withdrawal. The Krell invasion convinced us. The council cannot protect us. It never could. It was always humanity that kept the peace." Jaiwan looked at her old friend. "Leaving the council is a serious decision. You'll face the same pressures we did. We'll face worse pressures if we stay. The Delphine systems are near Krell space. When the council's current fleet fails, and it will fail, the Krell will be emboldened. They'll attack someone else. Maybe us. And you think humanity will protect you?" "No," Soho said. "I think the Delphine people will protect ourselves. But we'd like to do it with human friendship and cooperation. We're proposing a mutual defense treaty. Our forces coordinate with yours. We share intelligence and resources. We stand together, not as council members, but as genuine allies." Jaiwan smiled. "We'll need to take it to the assembly, but I suspect they'll approve. You've been good friends to us, Soho. We don't forget that." The news of the Delphine withdrawal broke across the galaxy like thunder. If the Delphine were leaving, who else might follow? 3 more species announced withdrawals within the next week. Then, 7 more. The council was fracturing. Back on Earth, Dr. Hannah was reviewing the flood of communications from council space. Messages arrived by the thousands every day. Some were threats. Some were demands. But, increasingly, they were pleas for help. Species wanted human engineers to fix their infrastructure. They wanted human traders to restore supply chains. They wanted human military advisors to help them defend themselves. They wanted what they had taken for granted and then lost. Dr. Hyun joined Hannah in the communications center. "We could help them," she said. "We have the resources." "At what cost?" Hannah replied. "If we just fix everything, they'll never learn. They'll become dependent again, and next time they'll resent us even more." "So we let them suffer?" "No. We help those who ask respectfully and are willing to work as equals. We negotiate fair terms. We teach them how to fix their own problems. But we don't go back to being the galaxy's free maintenance crew." Messages continued pouring in. Some species offered genuine partnership. Others demanded humanity return and stop being selfish. A few threatened military action, though those threats rang hollow given the Council's struggles against the Krell. On day 90, High Chancellor Qorim sent a private message to President Jaiwan. The message was brief: "We need to talk. Not as council to member, but as equals. Please." Jaiwan read the message 3 times. The word equals was key. It was an admission that the old relationship was over. "Draft a response," she told her secretary. "Tell the Chancellor we're willing to meet in a neutral system. No council delegation, no formal proceedings. Just a conversation between parties trying to find a better way forward." As the message was sent, Jaiwan looked out at Earth below, beautiful and blue and independent. The galaxy was falling apart. And, in the chaos, maybe something better could be built. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the meeting took place in a neutral system halfway between Earth and the Grand Chamber. The location was a small space station built specifically for the occasion, funded equally by Earth and the Council. No weapons were permitted within 10 million kilometers. President Jaiwan arrived with Commander Daeho and Dr. Hannah. They expected to meet High Chancellor Qorim and, perhaps, a few senior counselors. Instead, when their shuttle docked, they found representatives from 37 different species waiting in the conference hall. Counselor Vector was there, looking diminished somehow, his forearms hanging tiredly. The crystalline counselor who had demanded humanity's submission was there. Ambassador Siho had come as an observer, now representing the independent Delphine Alliance. And, at the center of it all, High Chancellor Qorim waited, his luminous form pulsing with what looked like exhaustion. This is more people than we expected, Daeho said quietly to Jaiwan as they entered. They're desperate, Jaiwan replied. Let's hear what they have to say. Kyorim spoke first, his translated voice lacking its former authority. President Jaiwan, thank you for coming. I know you expected a smaller meeting. The truth is, once word spread that we were meeting, everyone wanted to be here. The council is fragmenting.
15 species have withdrawn completely.
20 more are threatening to leave.
The galaxy we've governed for 3,000 years is falling apart. He paused, and, when he continued, his words were harder to say.
And, it's our fault. Silence filled the room.
No one had expected that admission. We made a mistake, Kyorim continued. We saw your strength and felt threatened instead of grateful.
We tried to control what we should have celebrated. When you walked away, we expected you to fail. We expected you to come back begging for readmission within weeks.
Instead, you thrived, Vector added, his voice rough. Your economy has grown 12% since withdrawal. Your colonies are expanding faster than ever. New species are signing treaties with Earth directly, bypassing the Council entirely. And, worst of all, you seem happier without us.
Dr. Hannah allowed herself a small smile. That last part was absolutely true. A counselor from a species Jaiwan didn't recognize spoke up. We've come to offer you full readmission to the Council. With unprecedented autonomy.
You would have a permanent seat on the High Council, veto power over any regulations affecting humanity, and complete sovereignty over your technology and military.
We'll formally apologize for the ultimatum. We'll make whatever concessions you need.
The counselor leaned forward.
Please. Come back. Help us restore order. Help us rebuild what's been broken. President Jaiwan looked at Commander Daeho and Dr. Hannah.
They had discussed this possibility and planned their response. But Jaiwan wanted to make sure they were all still in agreement.
Both of them nodded slightly.
I appreciate your offer, Jaiwan said carefully. And I recognize how difficult it must have been to make.
But I'm afraid we cannot accept it. The conference room erupted in protests. Several counselors began speaking at once, their translations overlapping into noise.
Jaiwan raised her hand, waiting for quiet.
Please, let me explain. The problem isn't the terms you're offering. The problem is the fundamental structure you're trying to preserve.
She activated a holographic display showing the Council's organizational chart.
The Galactic Council was built on a hierarchy.
Old species at the top, new species at the bottom.
Powerful species making decisions, weaker species following them.
It worked for a long time because most species accepted their place in that structure.
Humanity never accepted it, Daeho added. We paid lip service to it because we needed council membership. But we always knew it was wrong.
The idea that age equals authority, that power equals wisdom, that conformity equals stability, we rejected all of it.
Dr. Hannah brought up new data. Since our withdrawal, 11 species have signed bilateral treaties with Earth.
Every single treaty is built on the same principle, mutual respect between equals. We don't care if a species is 10 million years old or reached the stars last year. We care about what they bring to the relationship and whether we can trust each other. The Delphine people have 1/10 of our population and a fraction of our industrial capacity, Jaiwan continued, gesturing to Suho.
But we treat them as full equals in our alliance. Their vote carries the same weight as ours. Why? Because equality isn't about strength or age. It's about recognizing each other's inherent worth. Kyorim's form dimmed. You're saying the council itself is the problem. That we can't reform it from within.
I'm saying that you built something designed for a different era, Jaiwan replied gently.
When the council was founded, faster-than-light travel took months between systems. Communication was slow.
You needed a centralized authority to make decisions because getting everyone's input was impossible. But technology has changed that. We can communicate across the galaxy in seconds now.
We can travel between major systems in days. You don't need a central authority anymore.
You need a network of relationships built on mutual benefit and respect. A counselor who had been silent until now spoke up.
So what do you propose? Chaos? Every species for themselves?
No, Jaiwan said firmly. We propose something better than the council, but also different.
Not a replacement, but an alternative. She brought up a new display. We're calling it the Independent Alliance. It's not a government. It's not a ruling body. It's a framework for bilateral and multilateral cooperation between sovereign species. Daeho explained the details.
Any species can join by signing the charter, which commits them to 3 principles: respect for sovereignty, peaceful resolution of disputes, and mutual defense against aggression. Beyond that, each species negotiates individual relationships with whoever they want. There's no mandatory technology sharing, Dr. Hannah added. No required military coordination.
No oversight committees. If 2 species want to share technology, they negotiate terms.
If 3 species want to form a defense pact, they create one.
If 10 species want to build a trade network, they do it. Everything is voluntary. That's anarchy.
Vector protested.
You'll have wars, conflicts, competing alliances, we'll have freedom, Jaiwan interrupted. Yes, there will be conflicts.
But they'll be resolved between the parties involved, not dictated by distant authorities who don't understand the local context.
And, yes, there will be competing alliances. But competition drives innovation and improvement. She looked around the room. The council didn't prevent conflict.
It just delayed it and made it worse by forcing species with different values and needs into the same rigid structure. You kept peace by suppressing differences, and now all those suppressed differences are exploding at once.
QRM was quiet for a long moment. You're asking us to give up everything we've built.
No, Jaiwan said softly. I'm suggesting you recognize that what you built has outlived its usefulness. The council served its purpose. It brought species together when they couldn't connect on their own.
But now they can. And they'll be stronger for it. What about species that can't defend themselves? A counselor asked. The weak ones who need protection?
They can form alliances with stronger species based on mutual benefit, Daeho answered. We already have 6 species in the Independent Alliance who are militarily weak but economically or scientifically valuable. They contribute what they can, and stronger members help defend them.
It works because everyone chose to be there. Another long silence fell.
The counselors looked at each other, having silent conversations through whatever means their species used.
Finally, Vector spoke. I spent 300 years serving the council. I believed in it. I fought for it.
He paused, his voice strained. But I can't deny what I've seen these past 6 months.
The council is dying. Maybe it needs to die.
Other counselors murmured agreement.
Some looked relieved. Some looked devastated.
All of them looked tired. If we dissolve the council, QRM said slowly, it should be done properly.
With dignity. We should announce it as an evolution, not a collapse.
Give species time to prepare, to form new relationships. We can help with that, Jaiwan offered. Earth will host a summit for any species interested in the Independent Alliance. We'll provide resources for smaller species who need assistance transitioning.
This doesn't have to be traumatic. Some species will resist, Vector warned. Some will try to maintain the old order by force.
Then, they'll fail, Admiral Taeyang said, speaking for the first time. He had been standing quietly in the back, but now he stepped forward. The old order depended on everyone agreeing to submit. The moment some species choose freedom, the whole structure becomes optional.
You can't force voluntary submission.
That's a contradiction. The meeting continued for 6 more hours.
Details were discussed, concerns were addressed, possibilities were explored.
Not everyone was convinced, but most saw the writing on the wall. As the meeting finally ended, Counselor Vector approached Jaiwan privately. "I was wrong about your species," he said.
"I thought you were children playing with weapons you didn't understand."
"But, you understood something we had forgotten, that true strength comes from choosing your own path, not from being protected by others." "We're not special," Jaiwan replied. "We just remember what it's like to struggle and to be afraid. And we learned that dignity and freedom matter more than security."
Vector nodded slowly. "I hope the galaxy is ready for what comes next." "It will be chaotic," Jaiwan admitted. "But it will also be honest. And, in the long run, I think that's better."
2 years later, the Galactic Council formally dissolved in a ceremony attended by representatives from over 400 species. High Chancellor QORM gave a final speech acknowledging the Council's achievements and its failures, and declaring that the galaxy was ready for a new era. The Independent Alliance had grown to 83 member species. The charter had been refined and strengthened, but its core principles remained unchanged: sovereignty, peaceful resolution, and mutual defense. There were still conflicts. 3 species had gone to war over a border dispute, though mediation from neutral parties eventually resolved it. Some species refused to join any alliance and chose complete isolation. A few tried to form their own mini-empires, though they quickly found that other species weren't interested in new hierarchies. But, overall, the galaxy was more dynamic, more innovative, and more free than it had ever been under the Council. Commander Deho, now retired from active service, taught political science at the first interspecies university, located on a human colony world. Students from 30 different species attended his lectures on the principles of voluntary cooperation. Dr. Hanna led research teams that included scientists from a dozen species, working on projects that no single civilization could accomplish alone. The research was shared freely among Alliance members, accelerating progress for everyone. President Jaiwan had finished her term and passed leadership to a new president. But she remained active in diplomacy, helping new species navigate the transition from council oversight to independence. One evening, Admiral Taeyan visited Jaiwan at her home in South Korea. They sat on a hillside, watching the sunset and talking about old times.
"Do you ever regret it?" Taeyang asked. "Walking away from the council?"
Jaiwan smiled, the same question she had answered in her last speech as president.
"Regret? We showed them that silence could be louder than any threat. That dignity was more powerful than any weapon.
We walked away, and, in doing so, we walked into our future." She looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky.
"Some of those stars have human colonies now.
Others have new friends we've made, species we never would have known under the old system. The galaxy is bigger and stranger and more wonderful than the Council ever let it be."
"No regrets, Admiral," she said firmly. "None at all."
Above them, a ship entered orbit, carrying settlers from Earth and volunteers from 6 different species, all heading toward an uncharted sector to build something new together. The galaxy had changed. And humanity, by choosing to stand alone, had shown others they could do the same. It wasn't the ending the Council had expected when they issued their ultimatum. But it was the ending the galaxy needed.